Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to tonight this qualifying preview, of course, for qualifying that is tomorrow on Saturday at Paul Ricard for the 2022 French Grand Prix. Hope all you guys are doing well. If you were able to watch practice today, then hopefully you enjoyed it. I caught a bit of practice too. I didn't watch practice one because I was basically asleep still, but yeah, the weekend so far has been an interesting one. We've had plenty of upgrades to the cars that I'll get onto in this stream, and it's looking decent. Sorry, decent going into the rest of the weekend as to what we are going to get, maybe entertainment-wise, in qualifying and possibly even in the Grand Prix on Sunday. But yeah, it's looking like a good weekend so far. And what we're going to get into, guys, in this qualifying preview is obviously look at all the teams, how they did, and preview how I think realistically they are going to do results-wise in qualifying. We'll get into the results of practice 1 and practice 2, and also we will get into practice 2 data, the best sector times for all the teams and the ideal lap times, and we'll also get into something that I did last night, which was an onboard lap around the track, but I have a better clip this time than the one I had last night, which wasn't that bad of a clip, but the one I have today is a bit better quality, so I'll go through that again. Also, we'll get into some stats regarding qualifying for certain teams and what to look out for those certain teams. But yeah, that's what we're going to get into in this stream tonight. Hopefully you're all doing well on what is obviously in Europe and where this Grand Prix is taking place, a very hot part of the summer that we are going through. If you are in that part of Europe or the world, hopefully you're enjoying it. And I hope that tonight you'll join me in previewing qualifying here in France, which of course takes place tomorrow at 3 p.m. UK time, I believe is when the session starts. And in regards to what my content plan is for tomorrow, I'll get into that a couple times during the stream so you guys know what I am planning to do in regards to that. But let's get into the practice 1 and practice 2 results before we get into the teams quickly. Then practice 1, Charles Leclerc, just about by a tenth of a second, was quickest from Max Verstappen second, Carlos Sainz third. Sainz, by the way, has a 10-place grid penalty for let me just quickly check actually what the exact part was that they changed on his power unit. He has a 10-place penalty to Sainz, which could become a bigger penalty, meaning that he'll have to start from the back later on. Let me just have a quick look to see what the part was quickly. And I can't see, unfortunately. No, can't see. But yeah, he does have a 10-place grid penalty. I think it's for a new... If I remember correctly, I think it was a new control electronics that gave him the penalty. But I believe Ferrari might be doing what they did in Canada, because with Leclerc, I think they did the same thing. They took a new control electronics initially to get the 10-place penalty, that eventually took on a whole new power unit, which meant Leclerc had to start from the very back. So yeah, that's what is happening for Sainz this weekend. But yeah, he ended up P3. George Russell was 4th, and then it was Pierre Gasly 5th, Sergio Perez 6th, with Norris 7th, Alex Albon, very surprisingly, up in the top 10 in 8th place. Nick De Vries, who obviously stood in for Lewis Hamilton in practice 1, he ended up 9th. Got to say, for him to be only half a second off Russell in this practice session, I thought was quite impressive, considering how great Russell has been this season, how great Russell is, obviously. But also, this is pretty much the first time Nick has probably driven the car in representative conditions, and at a proper Grand Prix weekend. So I thought it was a quite impressive showing from the Dutchman. And then Daniel Ricciardo completed the top 10, and then the rest of the order was Zhou Guanyu, Lance Stroll, Esteban Ocon, Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso, Mick Schumacher, Kevin Magnussen, Yuki Tsunoda, Robert Kubica, and Nicholas Latifi. Let's get into the practice 2 results though. Carlos Sainz ended up quickest by 1/10 of a second from Charles Leclerc second. Max Verstappen third, half a second behind the Ferraris pretty much. And yeah, much work to do for Red Bull if they're going to be getting anywhere near a pole position in France. And then you've got George Russell 4th, Lewis Hamilton 5th, Lando Norris up in 6th, McLaren looking pretty good so far this weekend. I'll get onto why that probably is in a moment. And then you've got Pierre Gasly 7th, Kevin Magnussen 8th, Daniel Ricciardo 9th, and Sergio Perez in P10. I've got to say, Sergio Perez, I don't know if it's the Red Bull car that just isn't working that well around this type of track, but Perez has been awfully slow so far this weekend. And then the rest of the order, Alonso 11th, and then Bottas 12th, Vettel 13th, Tsunoda 14th, Stroll 15th, Albon 16th, Zhou 17th, Ocon 18th, Schumacher 19th, and Nicholas Latifi in 20th place. But looking at practice 2, which obviously is a more representative session because they run more of the soft compound tyre and is run in more representative conditions for what qualifying will be like tomorrow, Ferrari definitely have the quickest car. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Red Bull are 3rd quickest, and then you've got Mercedes. Oh no, Red Bull is Red Bull are 2nd quickest, and then Mercedes are 3rd quickest. I've got to say that obviously I thought Ferrari this weekend would have definitely over a single lap at the very least the best car, but I did not think we'd see this kind of gap in practice 2 of half a second. I thought that was not really going to be that possible to do. I thought at most the gap would be 2 to 3/10 of a second. So very impressive there by Ferrari. One thing we have to say though, judging by what we've seen so far, Mercedes' upgrades that were, according to some people, supposed to put them right at the front of the grid, clearly haven't worked, and Mercedes are lacking a lot of speed. Obviously, qualifying is tomorrow, and we'll see when F1 has to show what they have, what they truly have. But realistically, by the looks of it, Mercedes are not that quick at all, and they won't be really challenging for the top 3 on the grid. And then McLaren, yeah, looking improved on what we've seen in the last few races. AlphaTauri as well, looking improved, and they've also brought upgrades this weekend. And then after that, looking pretty close in the midfield between Alpine, Haas, Alfa Romeo, Williams even to a certain degree, with Alex Albon in 16th, not that far behind certain cars or drivers ahead. So yeah, looking very competitive in the midfield, and there are definitely a couple differences in the pecking order by the looks of it than what I say expected coming into this Grand Prix. But let's now get on to the teams, and of course we will start with Red Bull Racing. And yeah, in practice 2, we saw, and the Red Bull, by the way, they didn't have, with both drivers, that great a lap. Sergio Perez, obviously, the man on screen, just very, very slow today. A second slower he was than Max in practice 2. So there has to be something fundamentally wrong with the balances of his car for him to be that far off. But yeah, the Red Bull, even though both drivers did not get the absolute best lap, you can clearly see the Red Bull is just not as good as the Ferrari car this weekend. Even in the middle sector, where Red Bull are quicker, as I'll get onto in a moment with the FP2 data, looking at all the sector times and the best sector times for all the teams. Even though Red Bull are quicker in the second sector, which is really all about power, the gap is very, very small because Ferrari have that slimmer rear wing, and that's really helping their top-end speed. So Red Bull are definitely in a bit of trouble in regards to their single lap pace. When it comes to race pace, I won't get into that tonight. I'll get into that on Sunday in the build-up to the Grand Prix, because I do actually have some data saved from the long runs in the back half of practice 2, which were quite good for Red Bull, I have to say. But over a single lap, Red Bull just aren't really on par at all with Ferrari. I think Red Bull will close the gap tomorrow. I don't think the gap's going to be half a second between, say, Leclerc and Verstappen, if that is the front row of the French Grand Prix. But even if Red Bull can get that gap closed by running, say, a bit more power, I don't see it being, or making the making the difference for them to go from half a second away to, right with Ferrari. I just don't see that quite happening. So going into qualifying, we would have to say that Red Bull are, they won't, like I said, they won't be half a second away from Ferrari. They're going to be closer than that. But realistically, the gap is going to be probably about a quarter or a third of a second that the gap will be between Max and Leclerc because of how good the Ferrari is in Sector 1 and Sector 3. And with Carlos Sainz having his 10th-place penalty, what Red Bull have to do is get Max, say, third behind the two Ferraris, and then obviously once Sainz takes his penalty, Verstappen will then be second on the grid. And then for Sergio Perez, again, I don't know if this is maybe Red Bull deploying Perez differently today to try and figure out how to improve the car, or maybe they were on a different program with him, I don't know. But for him to be as far behind on pace, as far behind his teammate as he was, is quite worrying. He's never been Sergio that quick around Paul Ricard. I know last year he qualified 4th and he finished in 3rd place, but him finishing on the podium was helped by Mercedes doing a one-stop strategy, which ended up being a terrible strategy because their tyres completely fell off by the end of the Grand Prix. So I know Sergio's not that quick around this track, but to be as far off as he is really worrying, and that means that there is a risk with Red Bull that they might be under threat, not on pace, but at the start of the Grand Prix on the Sunday from Mercedes if Sergio Perez is not, say, right behind Max Verstappen on the grid. So, yeah, not looking good for Red Bull. What they need is 3rd and 4th in qualifying tomorrow, because that will be obviously 2nd and 3rd on the grid if Sainz is in the first 2 positions. And then from there, they can attack Leclerc and try and find a way past on strategy, maybe pit a lap earlier to try and get an undercut, or maybe go a bit longer into the Grand Prix to get fresher tyres for the later parts of the race. But it's not looking as though that's possible for them to be 3rd and 4th in qualifying. Looks more possible that they'll be 3rd and, honestly, 6th in qualifying tomorrow. So yeah, that's what it's looking like, unfortunately, for Red Bull. Like I said, they will improve tomorrow. It won't be as bad for them as it was today, but this has got to be the weakest Red Bull have looked so far this weekend that we've seen since Melbourne, really, that I can think of. Maybe even Monaco, you could argue, in terms of pace, pure pace. But, yeah, not looking good at all for Red Bull. And here are some stats regarding Red Bull going into qualifying tomorrow. The Max Verstappen does have 1 pole position in France. That was from last year in 2021. Red Bull, though, have never had, since 2018, and even since, I think, 2005, when they began in Formula 1 as a team, and we still had a French Grand Prix back then, Red Bull have never had 2 cars in the top 3 of a qualifying session in France. It's never been really that great of a Grand Prix for them, no matter the track. So, yeah, not great history around or in this country. And in Paul Ricard, they have decent history, but, nothing special compared to a certain other top team in Formula 1. Now, let's move on to the Ferrari team. And by no surprise, they have quite comfortably the fastest car in the field this weekend. I already predicted that this would be the case. I thought they would have probably a 2 or 3 tenths of a second advantage over Red Bull, to be honest. Again, I am surprised that the gap was half a second. Or not even half a second. What was it? 5.5 tenths in practice too. I think it will be closer tomorrow, but really, Ferrari are, without a doubt, the not just favourites, the clear, undisputed favourites for pole position. And as long as they get a 1-2 in qualifying tomorrow, ideally Carlos Sainz in first with Leclerc second, so Sainz can start in 11th as opposed to P12. I know it doesn't make much of a difference, but, the higher you start, it helps even just slightly. And I think also if Sainz starts in P11, then Sainz will be on the clean side of the grid, I believe. So, yeah, that would be ideal for Ferrari, but at the very least, pole position would be good enough for Ferrari. Not looking great, their race pace, I have to say, going into Sunday's Grand Prix from what I've seen so far. Like I said, I'll get into that more on Sunday, but the pace is definitely there. In Sector 1 and Sector 3, they are basically a couple tenths of a second quicker than Red Bull, and they have all of the grip, really, you do need to have a very fast car around here, and thankfully for them, have a slim enough rear wing, so they're not losing too much top-end speed in the middle sector, where it is pretty much flat out except for that chicane in the middle of the Mistral Straight. So, looking great for Ferrari. And yeah, I think they will end up, as long as Carlos Sainz doesn't have a dramatically poor qualifying session for whatever reason. I mean, obviously, Sainz may take another penalty yet. We don't know what's going to happen in regards to that. But if Carlos only takes a 10-place penalty, then unless Carlos has a disastrous qualifying session, it should be a Ferrari 1-2 in qualifying. Even though Max, we know, is a very quick driver over a single lap, I don't think the Red Bull is quite quick enough for him to be, right up there with Ferrari, or even splitting the two Ferraris if they both do Q3. So, looking great for the team, and definitely a great chance at winning the Grand Prix this weekend, especially if they do get pole position. Even though their race pace isn't looking great, the record from winning from pole position here is very, very strong. I think it's 100% since 2018. So, yeah, pole position, very, very important here at the Paul Ricard circuit. And I'm sure Ferrari will be very competitive for the race as well. Let me know, guys, in the chat. Do you think Ferrari are the clear favourites to get pole position tomorrow based on what we've seen so far? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know also, how do you think Red Bull will do, and how quick or close do you think they can get in qualifying tomorrow in the south of France? But for me, Ferrari are definitely the team to beat. And maybe something to do with that, maybe this, which is one of the Ferrari upgrades for this French Grand Prix. They have upgraded the mid to rear part of the floor, and also they have tweaked the diffuser at Ferrari coming into this Grand Prix. And it does appear that it has given them some extra pace. Not a massive amount, probably only a tenth of a second or something like that, but it has given them extra pace. So if you're a Ferrari fan, things are looking very good in terms of the pace of this car. And for once, looking pretty good in terms of the actual development of the Ferrari car. With this that they brought, and also the new slimmer rear wing, which is working really well for them. Yeah, looking good on that front for Ferrari for once. But let's get into some stats regarding Ferrari when it comes to qualifying. So Charles Leclerc has never taken pole position in France. I think last year he qualified 7th, and then in 2019 for Ferrari he qualified third. He's never really had a car quick enough to actually get pole position, to be fair to him. Ferrari don't have, though, a pole position in France since the return to the country in 2018. This has been pretty much 85% of the time a Mercedes track. Obviously, the regulations and the cars much different to what they were between 2018 and 2021, but in terms of historical results, it's not really been a place Ferrari have done that well at. And Ferrari's last pole position in France was in 2008 with Kimi Raikkonen. That weekend, they had a 1-2 in qualifying and a 1-2 in the race. That circuit, though, was Manicourt, where Ferrari, during that era, just completely dominated the races around there. And that was also the last French Grand Prix in 2008, before we returned to the country in 2018. But yeah, I think their chances of, breaking that record of their, their last pole position being in 2008 in this country, I think the chances of improving upon that are very, very good. But now we will move on to the Mercedes team, who had a lot of talk rather, coming into this Grand Prix weekend, that, they were bringing upgrades that could really see them being at the very front of the field, and apparently Mercedes engineers were very confident that they would be right on the pace of Ferrari and Red Bull here in France. But from what we've seen so far, that is absolute bullshit. They are absolutely nowhere near Ferrari and Red Bull. Let me just adjust this picture quickly. There you go. Yeah, they're nowhere near Ferrari and Red Bull. Even if they show more pace tomorrow, they're not going to be that much closer to the point where they're actually competitive with Ferrari on pace. And by the looks of it, they're not that quick over the long runs either that they did in practice too. So Mercedes are just not that quick here, as we'll get into in a moment with the FP2 data, where I'll get more so into just why Mercedes are not that quick around this track. But like I said earlier, I thought Nick de Vries, with his outing in practice 1, did pretty well to be only half a second off Russell in his first and possibly only practice outing for the Mercedes team. So yeah, I thought Nick did well. George had a good day, finishing P4 in both sessions. Lewis Hamilton obviously was a couple tenths of a second slower than Russell in practice 2, but I think a lot of that had to do with him missing obviously practice 1, and I am pretty confident that Lewis Hamilton will be ahead of Russell in qualifying tomorrow, because this is a pretty good track for Lewis, as I'll get onto soon enough with their stats as the Mercedes team and Lewis Hamilton in regards to this circuit. But yeah, Mercedes are not that quick, and they're definitely not going to be fighting for victory this weekend. But with Carlos Sainz possibly starting 11th or even at the back of the grid, and Sergio Perez not looking that quick, there is a chance that Mercedes could, if something happens, or not if something happens, sorry, if those two things do happen, that Carlos starts at the back of the grid and Perez is still very slow, Mercedes still could get a podium out of the weekend. So it's not looking like it's going to be a terrible weekend. I'm not going to go that far, but they're not on pace at all with Ferrari and Red Bull. And to be honest, I'm really surprised people actually thought they would be on pace for Ferrari and Red Bull. As I said, I will get into that in a moment with the FP2 data, and I will illustrate why I believe that, that is the case, as to why I never thought Mercedes were going to be that quick this weekend. But let's quickly get into an upgrade regarding the Mercedes team. So they have brought an upgrade to the floor area, but obviously we can't see that because they do hide it pretty well. But they have changed the end of the front wing, or the front nose cone of Mercedes. So this is the old one you can see here, and you just look at these two little almost like eyes at the bottom of the nose cone. And if I scroll down to the new one, you can see that that is now different. Now, this is for cooling on the front end. And also, if you look at the two nose cones, the top one looks to be a bit wider or fatter than the new one at the bottom. So that's a new upgrade for Mercedes, but I don't think this upgrade is actually going to be worth, really. If it's worth any lap time, it's not that much. We're talking probably a tenth of a second at most with this upgrade. It's not really that big of an upgrade at all. But yeah, that's the only upgrade really that we can visually see with Mercedes. Like I said, they have brought I think what do you call it? They have modified parts of the floor. So what do you call it? So yeah, because they're not going to show that type of stuff, that's why we don't have pictures of that. Just trying to quickly check something though. In chat. Oh no, I was just checking if the chat wasn't working, but I believe it is. Anyway, yeah, those are the visible upgrades for Mercedes, and let's quickly get into some qualifying stats regarding Mercedes as well. So Lewis Hamilton has taken pole position twice in France since 2018, both in 2018 and 2019. But also, Lewis has gone now 12 races without a pole position. That is the longest run he has gone without a pole position since the second half, pretty much, of the 2010 season and the first, I think, 3/4 of the 2011 season. I think between that time, I think it was Canada 2010 and Korea 2011. I think he went in that time. It must have been 20 to 25 races without a pole position. But the run he's on now is starting to be as long as that one. So, yeah, Lewis Hamilton, despite being, very, very quick around this track, obviously doesn't have the car to really fight for pole position, meaning that this barren run, when it comes to lack of pole positions, goes on for Lewis, which is sad, but that is just the way Mercedes and Hamilton have been this season with their pace and results. But now, before we get into the midfield teams, we'll get into some FP2 data and look at where all the teams where all the teams are quick and not so quick, and look at the ideal laps for all the teams, and just look at where the all the teams are compared to one another. So let's now get into that. By the way, credit to @LightsOutF1 blog. They're a great Twitter account. Also check out their blog website that you can see there on the bottom there. I grabbed this from Twitter, and it's a fantastic illustration of the data. So let's get into that data now. So in regards to Ferrari versus Red Bull, Sector 1, Ferrari are miles quicker than Red Bull. Pretty much a third of a second quicker, which is, a lot of pace to have over Red Bull. Then in Sector 2, you can see my point that even though Red Bull still have an advantage in straight line speed over Ferrari, it's not as big as it was, meaning that even though Red Bull are quicker, you can see it's only by 0.003 of a second, which is nothing, really. So yeah, Red Bull don't really have the advantage that they had previously before Ferrari brought their slimmer rear wing. And then in Sector 3, Ferrari are 1/4 of a second quicker. Let me just mute my microphone quickly to clear my throat. There you go, that should be better. So yeah, Ferrari pretty much in all of the sectors are quicker than Red Bull. I mean, yes, Sector 2, Red Bull are quicker, but it's by nothing pretty much. And Ferrari around the whole track have, I think, a better car. And you can see there for the ideal lap, 0.5 second quicker than Red Bull. That is a lot of time to have over the next best car in 1 minute 32.5 lap. That is a lot of lap time to have. The Ferrari looking very quick. And this does, like I think I mentioned earlier, it does remind me of just how quick they were. How quick they were in Melbourne at the Australian Grand Prix, where they were pretty much half a second quicker, certainly in the race, than Red Bull. Now, with Mercedes, you can see pretty clearly why Mercedes are not that quick. Well, compared to Ferrari. Compared to Red Bull, they're actually not that bad. Mercedes, they're only, 0.03 of a second slower than Red Bull in Sector 1, and then about 1/10 of a second slower in Sector 3, and then 1/10 slower in Sector 2. So, compared to Red Bull, they're not that slow. But compared to Ferrari, the differences are quite clear. And the reason in Sector 1 and Sector 3, compared to Ferrari, they are so slow, is because of something we have seen countless times this season, which people for some reason have forgotten, which is the Mercedes car is not quick in the medium and slow speed corners. And there are a few medium and slow speed corners around this track, such as, turn 4, 5, 6, and then you have turn, well, maybe not turn 11, but definitely turn 12. A bit of a, say, medium speed corner, and then, turn 13, 14, 15, and I think 16 towards the end of the lap are some medium speed and even very slow corners, and the Mercedes car is not quick at all in those corners, and that's why in Sector 1, where you have, I think, 3 or 4 slow corners, Mercedes are 3/10 off, and in Sector 3, they're 3.5 off Ferrari in that sector because of the lack of grip they have in the slow and medium speed corners. Because in Sector 2, at high speed, you can see, they don't have as good a straight line speed as Red Bull and Ferrari, which we've seen pretty much all season, but they're right there pretty much with Red Bull and Ferrari when it comes to that. But because of their lack of pace in the slow and medium speed corners, they are quite a bit behind the Ferrari and Red Bull, or not the Red Bull team, but definitely the Ferrari team in Sector 1 and Sector 3. So there's nothing really Mercedes can do about that. It's just the nature of this car. This car is very good at high speed, and especially in high speed corners, but in slow and medium speed corners, this Mercedes car is just not quick enough. It's not quick enough. It's not really in the same ballpark as a Ferrari, and probably, we'll see tomorrow, as a Red Bull. It just isn't. It just is not. So I think people need to accept that this is not really going to be improved upon from Mercedes. And I think a big reason why they have a lack of pace in the slow speed corners is because of an upgrade they brought to the Miami Grand Prix, where they actually brought a lower downforce, I think, front wing, which has cut off a bit of downforce, but has eliminated some of that drag they had in the first 4 races of the season. Because if you remember, there was a lot of talk back in Bahrain from a lot of people in the know, in the paddock, during preseason testing, that in the high-speed corners, Mercedes were not that quick. But in the slow-speed corners, Mercedes were very quick, because they had a lot more downforce on then. Now they've cut off a bit of downforce to cut the drag. Now they're losing speed in those corners. So, yeah, that's why Mercedes are in this position. And that's why Mercedes this weekend will not be fighting for victory. They don't have the pace to do that. They definitely will be in the fight for the podium, I reckon, but fighting for, fighting for the win, that's just not going to happen. It could happen, though, in Hungary. So let's watch out for how they do in Hungary, because in Hungary, there's only really, especially when your car is very skinny on fuel in qualifying, there's only, 3 or 4 slow corners out of, how many corners? 20 corners almost. And also, it's what do you call it? The lap is a bit shorter around the Hungaroring by about 15, 16 seconds, which will help Mercedes be a bit closer to whoever the quickest team is. So if you want Mercedes to be right up there, you're going to have to wait another week for the Hungarian Grand Prix, where I think they'll be a bit more competitive. But around the Paul Ricard circuit, yeah, they just don't have the pace really whatsoever to be that quick. I've got to say, though, the most surprising thing looking at this data is the pace of the McLaren. So, in Sector 1, very surprising that they're almost a tenth and a half quicker than Red Bull and also Mercedes in Sector 1. I think that's clear evidence that their upgrades, not their upgrades have worked, but the grip this car has is very good, but they've just lacked a lot of straight line speed. But look at their pace in Sector 2. I remember Sector 2, as I'll show later with the onboard lap, is flat out except for that chicane right in the middle. So for them to be so quick compared to that, Haas, Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, where normally, I think back in Canada, they were like at the very bottom of the sectors where it was power dominant. For them to be this much quicker is absolutely fantastic. And if they can translate that in qualifying, McLaren could be a dark horse for maybe a top 5. Maybe they could fight with Mercedes this weekend. The biggest problem is that in Sector 3, for some reason, McLaren lost a lot of lap time, which I'm not really sure as to why that happened. Because they're right there with Red Bull and Mercedes, or at least Mercedes, in Sector 1 and Sector 2. But in Sector 3, they're miles behind. I don't quite know why that is. Maybe they've cut some drag off that car. McLaren have brought some upgrades to this weekend, which I will get into in a few moments' time. But if they can, because they're consistently ahead of every team from 5th to 10th place in Sector 1 and Sector 2, if they were, say, consistently ahead in Sector 3, just like they're ahead in Sector 1 and Sector 2 of the rest in the midfield, so they'd have to be, 0.2 of a second quicker, then you see, for the ideal lap, they would be right on pace with Mercedes. So look out for McLaren tomorrow, because I reckon with Lando Norris especially, they could be on for a very good result, and maybe McLaren have the pace to fight for maybe a top 5 this weekend. It would certainly be a great thing for the McLaren team. And then when it comes to the rest of the teams, Haas looking pretty quick. AlphaTauri definitely looking much quicker in the sectors where, grip is a lot more important, which is good to see. Also, they brought some upgrades, and according to the ideal lap, they are the 5th quickest team, which is good to see. Alpine, surprisingly poor, I have to say, especially in the second sector. Maybe that's, though, down to them not running their power unit in as high of a mode as they will tomorrow, obviously, in qualifying. So we'll have to see what they do in qualifying in regards to that. Because if they were on the pace of McLaren in Sector 2, then they would be rising up to, about where AlphaTauri and Haas are. So yeah, surprising that Alpine are so slow. And Alfa Romeo also, to a certain extent, I'm a bit surprised they're not a tad quicker in, say, Sector 1 or Sector 2. And then consistently, Williams are the slowest team in all of the sectors, which is a shame. But they're still competitive to a certain extent with all the rest of the teams. For the whole lap, I would say they're not absolutely miles off that they were at other times in 2022. Obviously, with their upgraded car that both drivers now have. But before we get into McLaren, let me just quickly get into what I think the pecking order will be. So obviously, it won't be the exact same as what it was with the ideal lap here on the far right from practice 2. But what I think it will be is Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, and then AlphaTauri. And then I think Alpine will improve because I think in Sector 2 they'll definitely have a lot more straight line speed than what they had, or pace in Sector 2, where straight line speed is very important. So I think it'll be Alpine then in 6th at worst, and then Haas, Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin, Williams. That's how I think it's looking going into qualifying. So now let's get back to these, and let's move on to the McLaren team, who are definitely looking a lot better than they've looked previously this season, and they have brought McLaren quite a few updates to the Grand Prix this weekend. I'm just going to quickly get Twitter up to read out the exact upgrades, because it's by far the most out of any team. Let me just quickly get to that, and I'll also have a picture on screen of one of the key updates. So McLaren's updates are rear wing end plate, side pods, engine cover, cooling louvers, floor and diffuser, and rear brake ducts. When, Ferrari have just brought that floor that I showed you. Mercedes have brought, I think, that new front wing, but also floor edge and front brake ducts. I think the floor edge, though, is the only performance upgrade that they've actually brought. And then for the other upgrades, I think the only other team that's brought a significant upgrade is AlphaTauri, which we'll get onto later. But yeah, McLaren have brought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 upgrades to this Grand Prix. So it's not really a surprise that McLaren are so quick this weekend. Because, I thought they would be quicker this weekend than what we saw in Austria. I know Austria, they had reliability problems, and they had power unit problems with Norris's car or engine, and then also he had brake problems in qualifying in Austria as well. But the general pace of the McLaren car was not that great, so I always thought and expected it to be a bit better here than it was at the Red Bull ring. But they are not just a bit better, they're much better, to the point where they look as though they could be on pace with Mercedes in qualifying tomorrow. And if they were to be, then that would represent a massive step up for McLaren and would effectively put them back into the position they were in 2021, where they were right on the edge of being a top team and fighting for podiums at, say, every Grand Prix. And always there picking up the scraps from when Mercedes and Red Bull had their issues. So McLaren looking very, very good. And I would hope that this upgrade, when qualifying does come and F1 finally shows what they have, I would hope that McLaren do genuinely have much more pace than before. And I think what would be good for them is if they got both cars into the top 10, and I think they will get both cars into the top 10, because Lando Norris is pretty good around this track. Remember, in 2019, he qualified 5th here for McLaren, and also Daniel Ricciardo, his teammate, has had pretty good drives around Paul Ricard. Last year finished in 6th in the Grand Prix, right behind his teammate Lando. And then in 2019, he qualified 7th ahead of a Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel, which was much quicker. And I think 2018, he was on for a podium, Ricciardo, in the Red Bull, but had a slightly broken front wing by going over a curb too hard or something like that. So Ricciardo does have good form here as well. To look out for Daniel Ricciardo. But yeah, McLaren are looking very, very good. And I really hope, because they have been so far the biggest disappointment this season of McLaren, I hope this is them, not fully, but a bit more stepping up to the plate and stepping up to the point where, or to the level that we were expecting from them this weekend. But let's quickly get into the McLaren upgrade. And this is the McLaren upgrade. And I think, Lando Norris here, car number 3. Let me just clear my throat again. So again, I'll get into that. So Lando Norris here on the bottom, car number 3, had the upgrade in practice 1, and Daniel Ricciardo here, car number... Oh no, Daniel Ricciardo's car number 3, what am I on about? I'm such an idiot. So Daniel Ricciardo here has the upgrade. I think this is from practice 1. And then Norris, car number 4, has the old upgrade, the old side pod here. And you can see, by the way, credit to the race for this picture, you can see the difference. So the old side pod is not quite as direct in the way it goes down back to the floor. When you look at the new one on the bottom, it's a lot more like the Red Bull or the Williams even, or even the Aston Martin, in the way the side pod, quite smoothly and clearly heads back down to the floor. So what they're essentially going for here is a Red Bull style floor, which we've seen many teams do during 2022. And can we see any differences with the engine cover? Because also that's one of their upgrades. It looks a bit slimmer by the looks of it to me, but that might just be the new side pod design that's doing that. But the engine cover to me looks to be pretty similar, so it's not a massive difference there. And then with the floor and diffuse, obviously we can't really see the upgrades with that because they're quite well hidden, and then we can't really see the rear brake ducts. But this is going to be this side pod upgrade that we're seeing here. This is the biggest upgrade for McLaren, and this will represent, this will be the upgrade that gives them the most amount of lap time out of all of the other upgrades they have brought. We've seen with Williams, for example, with the new side pod they brought, which is a lot like the Red Bull. Look how much quicker they've been since then. So, yeah, McLaren definitely going to be a lot quicker with this new side pod design. But back to McLaren, and yeah, if that new side pod design and the other upgrades work well, then McLaren this weekend will be probably, at worst, the 4th quickest team and be just behind Mercedes. But I reckon, especially if Lando Norris can really pull out a strong lap in that McLaren, I think Lando could end up actually splitting the Mercedes in qualifying and possibly being very competitive for a podium in the Sunday Grand Prix. So look out for McLaren, because they've definitely got very, very good pace. But let me just quickly look at something, because for some reason, I mean, it may just be because there's not a lot of comments in the chat, but normally there's a lot more in the chat than there is at the moment. So let me just quickly look to see if that is... no, that's just the amount of comments that are actually in the chat. I thought the chat was glitching and it wasn't showing enough comments, but no, that's just the amount of comments. Unfortunately, Rook is not here because he's busy with other things, but yeah. To be honest, did I read out a few of these comments? I'll read out a few. I mean, there's only like 5 or 6 so far, so yeah, I'll read out these few and then I'll just continue on with the rest of the show. Simon says, Mercedes compare well to the Red Bull's car's pace, but Ferrari looking very fast. Yeah, Mercedes are comparing well to a certain extent, but I think Red Bull will improve tomorrow, so I don't think it will be actually that great for Mercedes. Broccoli Games says, do you think the Ferrari motor is going to explode? It's likely in these conditions, these very hot conditions, but I'd say it's a 50-50, to be honest. Sparky Pete says, we are sandbagging at the minute at Mercedes, the good old days, lol. Say Regard says, McLaren have definitely been the disappointment of the year. Yeah, they definitely have. But with this upgrade, they could really start to mix things up in 2022. But let's, before we get on to the rest of the midfield teams, let's get into what it really takes to have a great qualifying lap here in France at Paul Ricard circuit by getting into the track and the lap itself. So here is the track map, and yeah, Sector 1, definitely towards the end of Sector 1 it gets quite pedestrian at times, and Sector 2 very fast and high speed, and then Sector 3 has a very nice flow to it. So let's now get into the lap itself, and this is a onboard of Tatiana Calderon in a, I think, a 2012 Sauber F1 car, who will be taking us through this lap. So here we go down the pit straight. Not that long of a straight. The exit from the final corner, very important for your good speed on the straight there. Hitting the apex of turn 1, very important. And then make sure you keep the rear end in check on the exit of turn 2. Very important as well, as it's very easy to spin off on the exit of turn 2. Then into turn 3, you have to attack that inside curb and hug that curb on the left. Turn 4, then into turn 5 and 6. 2 honestly shit corners. I really hope they get rid of them in the future. And then onto the first, I'd say proper overtaking opportunity on the track as you head down now to the chicane on the middle of the Mistral Straight. Braking, very important for this chicane. You don't necessarily have to absolutely smash the apex of the first or second part of the chicane, but as long as you have a smooth run through, then that is absolutely fine. And then you build up speed again into turn 10, which is a flat-out right-hander. Would be very fun to see those cars go through that corner in the wet, I'd have to say, because it'd be interesting to see who'd carry that extra speed through there. Then you go into this right-hander that just never ends. And very important not to go too wide on the exit of that corner. Then into, I think, turn 13 this is. Braking, very important for that corner. Also hitting the apex, very important for that corner, which is something Tatiana did not do very well there. Then into the 2 final corners, you've got to hug that curb on the left, and she kind of does that here. And then into the final corner, traction, very important. And if you get good traction, you have a good run to the line, and then that is your lap around Paul Ricard. So that is the key to a good lap here in France. And let's now get on with the rest of the teams before we get to the end of this stream. We'll go on to Alpine. And yeah, Alpine definitely not looking as quick at this point of the weekend than I expected. Back in the FP2 data that I looked at in Sector 1 and Sector 3, they were not too bad, but definitely not as quick as I thought they would be. But yeah, in Sector 2, they were quite a bit off the pace. And I think that definitely is clear evidence that Alpine are sandbagging a bit and are not running as much power as they could, because they should not be that far down in Sector 2, where it is, as I just showed, pretty much flat out. So Alpine will be better tomorrow. So if you're an Alonso, an Ocon, an Alpine fan, or you're just a French F1 fan that wants to see this French team do well, don't worry, they will be better tomorrow. I definitely think Fernando Alonso will be in the top 10, but it's clear to see that McLaren are going to be pretty comfortably ahead of Alpine, which is disappointing for them, because obviously Alpine are now level with McLaren in the Constructors' Championship, and obviously that's a big fight in the championship between McLaren and Alpine. That's a very important fight for the future of those two teams going forward until the next big set of regulations in 2026 to see who can be superior over the rest of the midfield. But yeah, Alpine, I think they'll be in the top 10 in qualifying, at least for one of their cars. And I think they'll be fine to a certain extent in the race. But yeah, they're definitely not as quick as I expected them to be. Now, moving on to Alfa Romeo. Yeah, in Sector 1 and Sector 3, like I was saying a few moments ago, Alfa Romeo, I think, definitely should have been quicker than what we saw. I thought they would have been a bit closer to, say, a McLaren in those sectors, but yeah, just haven't got an absolute ton of pace. To be fair to them, in practice 1, they had Robert Kubica in place of Valtteri Bottas, because they were also, having to get their free practice driver into their car because of the rule that you have to have, I think, your reserve or young driver do one or two practice sessions a year or something like that. So yeah, not the greatest or smoothest start to the weekend, but yeah, they are lacking a bit of pace, Alfa Romeo, but they're not lacking as much pace compared to what I expected to say Alpine. So they're still looking okay. They will be competitive for getting into the top 10, but they're not going to be as competitive, I feel, as they will be in the race on Sunday. So all they've got to really do is get, say, both cars in the top 13 on the grid, and they should be okay for the race on Sunday. Valtteri Bottas does have a very good record around this circuit and has always been very quick here, so I have no doubt he'll be very quick tomorrow over a single lap. So look out for Alfa Romeo in qualifying tomorrow, but yeah, they're in a very close fight with, Alpine, AlphaTauri, Haas for sneaking a car maybe into the top 10. Now let's move on to Haas F1, who have not brought that big upgrade for this weekend. I believe that's coming for the Hungarian Grand Prix for the Haas team. But their pace today was very, very good. In Sector 1 and Sector 2, I believe it was, they were quicker than AlphaTauri, Alpine, Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin, Williams. And I definitely did not expect that to be the case. So Haas have got some decent pace, and definitely that qualifying pace, that really good qualifying pace they had like 2 or 3 years ago, has seemingly returned for them, because in the last 3 or 4 races, they've been very quick over a single lap on low fuel. So, yeah, very good Haas are looking. Mick Schumacher was very low down. I don't quite know why that was. He was 1.2 seconds slower than Kevin Magnussen, which is very slow, obviously. Magnussen was up in 8th place. So Mick will improve. Mick will probably improve by a second a lap on what he was doing there. So expect Haas to be dark horses for a very strong and surprisingly strong result in qualifying. And given how, I still think we'll get a lot of overtaking in this Grand Prix on Sunday, but given how it's a lot harder to overtake here than it is at the Red Bull Ring, Haas, if they can get a good qualifying result, could result in another very impressive and important double points finish. So look out for Haas, because that is possible with Kevin Magnussen being up in 8th place today for the Haas F1 team. And we'll go on quickly to AlphaTauri. I don't have pictures, unfortunately, of the AlphaTauri upgrade, but I can quickly read out what they were. And Franz Tost proclaimed after practice 1, the upgrade did work. So that is good to hear. And AlphaTauri, on the ideal lap that I showed earlier, were, by the looks of it, around the 5th or 6th quickest team, which is absolutely brilliant for them, considering most of this season they've been like 6th, 7th at best quickest team around most Grand Prix. The only Grand Prix really this season where they were like the 5th quickest team was like, I think Baku, which was almost 2 months ago. So yeah, it's not been a great season for them. And yeah, the upgrades for them are floor, fences, edge, and diffuser, and a new engine cover for them. So that's their new upgrades, and they seem to be working. They definitely seem to be a couple tenths quicker than you would expect them to be. I thought they would be a bit stronger here than what we saw in Austria, because they don't go that well or handle that well, this AlphaTauri team, or the car doesn't handle that well in the high-speed corners. Gasly has talked about this a lot, that the high-speed corners for them are really, really bad. And I think that's just a fundamental problem with the car. And obviously here at Paul Ricard, we do have fast corners, but not as many as you would get at Silverstone, Silverstone or the Red Bull Ring, which obviously were the last 2 races on the calendar before this weekend. So I thought they would be better this weekend, but it's good to see that the upgrades are working for them. And let's hope that they can, with Gasly, who has been, in the last couple of years, always very quick in qualifying. Now that they've got an upgraded car, let's hope they can be right up there in qualifying with Pierre. Remember, Pierre last year qualified 6th in the AlphaTauri and finishing 7th in the race. So something similar would be great for this team, who are trying to now fight back against Haas F1 to get back into 7th place in the Constructors' Championship. Now we've gone to Aston Martin. I'll quickly adjust this picture, but there's not much to say about Aston Martin because they are utter shit. Their car is terrible. They are definitely the, at best, second worst team on the grid. Their car just doesn't look that good around this track. It looks very heavy, I have to say, around this track. And heavy-looking cars normally are cars that just don't have a lot of downforce, really, or grip. And yeah, they're not going to be anywhere near the top 10 in qualifying, which is such a shame because we know this team is a lot more capable of good results than, say, other teams that are having good results at the moment, such as Alfa Romeo and Haas. So, yeah, very disappointing there. I did read out, I didn't read out, but I did read something earlier, though, that I want to quickly read out in regards to Sebastian Vettel and him probably staying at Aston Martin for next year, which I think, well, is realistically the only place he is going to be at in 2023. Aston Martin, according to Automotor and Sport, Aston Martin want to continue with Sebastian Vettel in 2023, and Vettel has confirmed talks with the team and his intention to continue, but a final decision will probably not be made until after the summer break. And a big reason for Sebastian wanting to stay, which I also want to read out so you guys don't think that Aston Martin are just going to be like this for years. There was this part of this translation that at Vettel Leclerc, or Tammy, did on Twitter. Brilliant Twitter account she is. And she translated a part of the article that says Aston Martin isn't doing a step forward for now, but Vettel also knows that the 2023 car will have the engineers involved that Aston Martin poached Red Bull and Mercedes as their, was it gardening leave or their bans from starting work at Aston Martin have now expired. So do remember that, guys, that even though the Aston Martin car now is not that quick, those engineers they have gotten from Mercedes and Red Bull will, maybe in the second half of the season, but definitely for 2023, will start to have an effect on this Aston Martin car. So make sure to not throw them away. As in, you know, this team, yeah, they're just going to be shit for a few years. They're not really a team that's going to contend, because it could change in 2023. So don't get too far ahead of yourselves. And finally, we'll go on to Williams. And yeah, Williams, even though their upgrade is working well, it's still giving them a lot of pace. They are still lacking enough, really, to properly compete with the other teams in the midfield. They'll be competitive to a certain extent. Alex Albon will be definitely very close, I reckon, to getting out of Q1. And if he can get into Q2, then that would be a fantastic result. And given how we've seen this season, Williams and Alex Albon looks after his tyres, with tyre wear and looking after your tyres being very important for this weekend because of the heat and because of the track layout. If he can get like a 14th or a 15th in qualifying, he could be in a decent position for the race because we know, like I said, how good he is at looking after his tyres. So as long as they get into Q2, that's a good enough result for Williams. But now I'll move back on to these pictures, and that is pretty much all that I have. Let me just quickly read out some more comments though. Vinster says, checking in, excited to see how the blistering heat will affect the Ferrari this weekend. Hoping to see Mercs have a good weekend, and of course hoping for a Red Bull 1-2. And also says, love the lap visuals, thanks for that. Sparky Pete says, thanks for the vids. And Prank says, I'm listening at work. Yeah, thanks for enjoying those lap visuals. I'm going to try and do that a bit more, I am, for, you know, looking at certain issues, or not issues, but certain topics, is include more clips in OBS, because it does help, I think, the quality of the stream and your guys' understanding of what I'm trying to talk about. Sparky Pizza's coming out for slow and medium turns. They are going much slower, hard to make up time on the straight. G Walker says, love the graphics, good weekend to all. Ferrari looking very tough. Thanks for that. And yeah, Ferrari looking very, very good. But guys, I've been live for an hour and 10 minutes, so I think I'll bring this qualifying preview to an end. Before you all go though, just stick around for a few more minutes, or maybe not for a few more minutes, but a few more moments, because I'm going to just quickly let you guys know of what my plan is for tomorrow and Sunday. So tomorrow, I will go live at 11:45 a.m. UK time. That's about 15 minutes before practice 3, and then I will be doing a practice 3 watch along until 1 p.m. UK time. Then from 1 p.m. till 3 p.m, I'll be doing a build up to qualifying, kind of showing or getting a bit more into what I showed in this stream. So I'll have that probably for tomorrow as well, but also getting into some other topics, not just doing what I've done here as a repeat. And then from 3 till 4 p.m. UK time will be the qualifying session itself, and that will be me doing a qualifying watch along. And then And then from 4 till 4:30 p.m. UK time will be the qualifying reaction, I guess you could call it. The qualifying watch along part of the stream will start at 1 p.m. just to let you guys know if you only want to join for that part of the day. And then for Sunday, I'll be live at 12 p.m. UK time until 1:30 p.m. for the race preview. Then from 1:30 p.m. till 4 p.m. UK time, I'll be live for the race watch along, probably with Nib as my co-commentator. And then from 4 till 5 p.m. UK time, I'll be live for the race reaction. So make sure, guys, to join me for all of that. And if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. It would be great to have you along for all of that stuff tomorrow and on Sunday. And if you're from watching, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5, and don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. And if you're bored at any point, make sure to go and watch my video, my latest recorded video, which is down below in the description. There's a link below to it. And it's a video about why Charles Leclerc should and must leave Ferrari at the end of his contract at the end of 2024. Make sure to go check that video out. It's in the description down below. But guys, until tomorrow, where I'll be covering practice 3, qualifying, and covering all of the stuff there is to cover on qualifying day in the south of France. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazzer HD. Goodbye.